Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with another non-traditional Valentine's Day card, as well as my card for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. And I gotta say, this one was several days in the making. Usually I can just sit down and create and things, for the most part, work out. I like to show the oopsies and all that kind of stuff. But this one, honestly, multiple attempts were made. Things were just not working. I don't know. I stamped these images on Bristol paper and heat embossed them and tried watercoloring and just so many things. And every time I was like, no, this isn't working. So my final attempt, I decided to stamp. These images are from the Monster Love stamp set from Concord in 9th. That is just so cute. So cute. And I've had it sitting here and waiting. So I stamped the images onto color cardstock. I stamped the little monsters onto gray cardstock. And I stamped the heart balloon image onto some blue cardstock. And I haven't used my colored pencils in a really long time. So I was thinking, you know, these would be fun to color with the color pencils on color cardstock. Usually I would use craft. That's just my go-to. But because I was doing this color challenge, I was like, well, I don't really want to use craft, but gray is a nice kind of neutral. And, again, haven't used my colored pencils. Here I am using my Polychromos colored pencils, which are kind of like, you know, the very fancy, fabulous ones. But anything's going to work. Prismacolors work great. Crayolas work great. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I literally just kind of start with a light hand. And then I just go in and use a little bit more pressure to add a bit of a darker color. And then I go in with one shade darker just to add a little bit more. But that's about it. I don't do any blending. I'm not using any artist grade odorless mineral spirits or anything to blend this out. With these images specifically, I thought it would just look cute to leave that texture in there. But a couple ways you can deal with that is, one, using more pressure, which I don't like doing with colored pencils only because my hands, I have like borderline carpal tunnel. So my hands and my wrists can't handle it. So using more pressure is one way to get rid of the texture if that bothers you. Another is to take the white pencil and completely go over it afterwards, again, using some pressure. There's also Prismacolor makes that like blending pencil. That can work. And then the last option is, of course, to use the odorless mineral spirits and blending stumps and whatnot. And I've done a whole bunch of videos on my channel over the years. This was actually one of my first real methods of coloring, way back before we had all the options we have now. So if you search that up on my YouTube channel, all those old videos will come up. But every once in a while, I remind myself that I have all these colored pencils and they're just kind of a fun way to add some color. And like I said, you don't need the fancy ones. They are great. I ain't gonna lie. Polychromos color pencils are fabulous and there's a lot of gorgeous colors and the quality is amazing. But they were definitely an investment. But I was always happy with, I still have my little set of Crayolas that I used to use from the time I was like little. And then, you know, did the step up to the Prismacolors and then these. So I just used the Polychromos today because they were, you know, handy. And kept the coloring simple though, added a little bit, you know, of that texture and whatnot. And then did a little bit of blending with the white pencil. And then the one thing with when you do color, you know, stamp an image and then color with colored pencils, is a lot of times you can end up kind of obscuring some of the line art a little bit. But more often than not, I'm either okay with it, or with things like little faces and whatnot, I will go over it like I am here with my Copic black Multiliner, just to, you know, recover those black lines and get them a little more crisp, and it makes, you know, the little facial images kind of peek out a bit more. But at the same time, it depends on the amount of coloring you've done in the image and whatnot, whether or not it's worth, you know, going over it again. And it's rare that I will go over like the entire stamped image, but sometimes that does make it, you know, really pop. So I did that. And then with this heart one, same idea. I'm just using some kind of blue colors to intensify it. And then this one I did go over with the white pencil almost fully, just to smooth it out a bit more, because this obviously isn't furry like the little monsters would in my head be more kind of a furry image. This is more of a balloon, would be more smooth. So I tried a little harder to keep it a little bit more smooth, but at the same time, I don't mind that bit of texture. It just kind of gives it a little extra something. So with this one, after I was done and like happy with the coloring, I used my anti-static powder tool very liberally over this, although it's just colored pencil. It'd be different if I'd used, you know, markers or anything else, then I would want to make sure this was completely dry. But it's also just habit for me, you know. So anti-static powder tool, and I stamped one of the sentiments from the Monster Love set, the Love You script sentiment. I'm going to stamp that right onto the balloon with clear embossing ink. And then I stamped just one of the sentiments from the set onto the open area of this blue cardstock, because I'm going to die cut that with the heart die in the set. So I'm going to stamp those. I'm going to coat both of these with my detail white embossing powder. Then I'm going to just let my heat tool heat up for a few seconds, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool until they are completely smooth and melted. And then once they're all melted, again, the lines of that balloon were a little bit obscured from the anti-static powder tool, but I just wiped that off with my fingers. It was good to go. And now I'm going to use the coordinating wafer dies from the set, and I'm going to die cut all of these images. So there's a die for this monster. There's a die for those are his little like fingers that you can use with the die cut heart, which I'll show when I assemble everything. And then there's the die for this littler monster. And then he has all those options for his arms, which I love. I love having all these options, and I love that Concord 9th always has these like very unique kind of quirky little things that they'll add to their sets. So, and the arms have like the wafer dies for the arms have like extra space so that you can adhere it easily behind, which again, I'll show in a second here. So I'm going to die cut all of that. I'm going to die cut the outline around the balloon heart. And then there's this separate heart die that die cuts a heart and an outline heart. So you kind of get 2 for 1. So I'm going to end up using both when I finish off this card. So I got all my dies taped into place with washi tape. Going to run these through my Big Shot machine, die cut everything. And then I went through my stash, and I have the layers of Love wafer dies that came out a couple years ago, I think. 2, 3, I forget. It's still available, but these came out a while ago, and I did a video a really long time ago, I think in a Valentine series either last year or the year before, using one of the dies from this set, or both of them. So I die cut that from some white cardstock. And now I'm going to start kind of assembling my little monsters here. So I'm going to add the arms to this little guy, just putting the adhesive on that excess space that the die leaves when it's cut, which again, I really appreciate when companies do little extras like that to just make things simpler. And then for the little gray monster here, I'm going to adhere that heart that I die cut. And then those little individual like fingers, you just kind of adhere those over top. So it looks like he's holding it, which I just think is the cutest thing ever. I love this set. I think it's adorable. So got those all adhered. And then I'm kind of like figuring out where I'm going to lay out everything and create. So I decided I was originally going to do just a white card base, because I actually really like the idea of that white heart die cut, and then it being white on white and just that more subtle texture. But instead decided to go with a blue card base just to make it pop just a little bit more, and to bring in that kind of darker blue of this color challenge. So once I had created my card base, which was heavyweight cardstock, again cut to 4 1/4 by 11, squared at 5 1/2. So this is a top folding A2 size card. I coated the back of that white cardstock with foam tape, and I also coated all the balloon and both of these monsters with foam tape as well. The balloon, I'm going to use some baker's twine here, and I wanted to add a little bow. So the easiest way to do little mini bows is you just basically do bunny ears. And before pulling it tight, while everything is still loose, you start making the bow, leave it loose, and then kind of adjust and get it the way you want it before pulling it tight. Because baker's twine, especially once it's tight, it starts to twist if you start pulling on it and trying to adjust your bow. So I created my little tiny baby mini bow. Just set that aside for a minute. And I took another piece of the baker's twine. I'm just taping it to the back of the heart with that same washi tape, because no one's going to see it. And then I am going to trim the end off of that, and then adhere everything with foam tape to the card front here. So I've got the foam tape on the back of all my monsters and this balloon. And then once I have the balloon in place, to adhere that baker's twine to his little hand, I'm just going to use a dab of multi-medium matte adhesive. That's my go-to when I want to adhere anything like this, because once this dries, this bigger twine isn't going anywhere. Same with that little bow. Just put a little dollop there on the base of the balloon. I'm going to stick that little bow in. You let it dry and it's good. It is not going anywhere. So once I got those adhered, I decided to use that little outline heart. I didn't want to get rid of it. I thought it was cute. So I added adhesive to the back of that as well. And just kind of tucked it behind that monster just to kind of add it to my background. So adhered that into place. And then I also pulled out some of my Doodlebug sprinkles. I have the rainbow hearts and the tiny hearts. And then since there wasn't a darker blue in the hearts, I just pulled out my regular blue jean sprinkles that I've had for eons. So pulled those out and just kind of added those to the card base as well, just to give it just that little extra something. So tucked a few of those in here and there, added a little white one to that die cut one that he's holding. Stuck those into place, tucked one of the bigger ones kind of underneath that large balloon there, since there's space with that foam tape. And then once I have that done, for the inside of the card, I decided it was easiest just to cut down another piece of white cardstock. And then I decided to stamp the smaller monster. This time I'm using Blue Jean Distress Oxide ink. And then I grabbed it's kind of the waving arm, but I decided I would stamp it on either side of him. So it kind of looks like he's got his arms outstretched. So stamped that, and then I stamped the big hugs next to it with what did I use? Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink. Just kind of pulling in the colors from the front. And then I also added this one other sentiment from that set that just says, "Hope your day is real nice." So I stamped that with the Nocturne ink as well. And then I'm just going to adhere this to the inside of my card with that craft tacky glue. And just kind of being careful to... this time I was paying attention and being careful to avoid the stamped images because they're not completely dry yet, because, you know, oxide inks, they're pigment inks, and the Nocturne ink is also a pigment ink. So usually I rub my fingers against it and smear everything. So I was very careful with that, let it dry. We're good to go. So that finished off the card for today. As always, there will be a link below the video to my blog post. There'll be a supply list with links to everything in the description box below the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you all very soon in another video. Bye!